Hey everyone! Before we begin today's story, if you enjoy these BL storytelling videos and want to support the continuation of this channel, you can join my Patreon, SpicyTimeBL. As you probably know, YouTube does not always make it easy to monetize this kind of content, so Patreon really helps me keep creating these stories for you. You can find the link in the description and in the pinned comment. And for those of you who want the continuation of these videos, bonus scenes, early access, and more uncensored, 18+ BL content, SpicyTimeBL is exactly where you can find it. Thank you so much for your support. And now, let's get into the story. There is something inherently intimate about an empty basketball court at 2 in the morning. Most people only know the arena when it's chaotic. They know the blinding stadium lights, the roar of 20,000 fans, the squeak of sneakers on polished hardwood, the smell of sweat and adrenaline, and the deafening buzzer that signals a win or a loss. But when the lights are turned down low and the stands are completely empty, the court becomes something else. It becomes a sanctuary, a place where secrets are kept, and where the only sound is the rhythmic, hypnotic bounce of a leather ball. Leo Thorne lived for that sound. Leo was 23 years old, and in the world of professional basketball, he was what you would call a problem child. He was a prodigy, a shooting guard with a vertical leap that defied gravity and a three-point shot that was practically automatic. He was tall, powerfully built, with tousled dark hair, sharp eyes, and a smirk that drove the media crazy. But he was also reckless. He was a hothead. He played on pure, untamed emotion, which was exactly why his previous team had traded him halfway across the country to the Portland Strikers. They said he was uncoachable. They said he was a lone wolf who didn't know how to play in a system. But when Leo walked into the Strikers' training facility for the first time, he wasn't prepared for the man who was waiting for him. Julian Vance. Julian was 35 years old, the youngest head coach in the league, and a legend in his own right. 10 years ago, Julian had been the best point guard in the country. He had the kind of court vision that you couldn't teach, a brilliant, calculating mind wrapped in a tall, broad-shouldered, incredibly athletic frame. But a devastating knee injury during the playoffs had ended his playing career overnight. Instead of walking away from the game, Julian had put on a custom-tailored suit, picked up a clipboard, and became a tactical genius on the sidelines. Julian was everything Leo was not. Julian was ice cold. He was composed, strict, deeply disciplined, and completely untouchable. He never raised his voice, but when he spoke, the entire gym went dead silent. Leo's first practice with the team was a disaster, and it was entirely Leo's fault. He was trying to show off. He wanted to prove that he didn't need to learn the team's complicated offensive plays. During a 5-on-5 scrimmage, instead of passing the ball to the open man, Leo took a ridiculous, heavily contested fadeaway shot. The ball went in. It was a beautiful, arrogant shot. Leo turned around, grinning, expecting to see his new coach impressed. Instead, Julian blew his whistle. The sharp, piercing sound echoed through the massive gym. Julian stepped onto the court, his hands in the pockets of his dark gray trousers. He walked slowly, his posture perfectly straight, his dark eyes fixed on Leo. The gym went completely quiet. You could hear a pin drop. "What was that, Thorne?" Julian's voice was low, smooth, and dangerously calm. Leo shrugged, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It went in, didn't it, coach?" "That wasn't the play," Julian said, stopping just a few feet away from Leo. Up close, Leo suddenly realized how tall Julian was. They were almost exactly the same height, but the way Julian carried himself made him seem larger than life. "Basketball is a game of probability, Thorne. You took a low probability shot because you wanted to look good. On my court, we don't care how you look. We care how the team functions." Leo felt a flash of irritation. "A bucket is a bucket, coach." Julian held his gaze. The eye contact was so intense, so unflinching, that Leo actually felt a strange shiver run down his spine. No one looked at him like that. People usually looked at Leo with admiration, or anger, or envy. But Julian looked at him like he was a puzzle that needed to be taken apart and put back together properly. "Bench," Julian said softly. Leo blinked, his jaw dropping. "What?" "It's practice." "And you are practicing how to ruin my offense," Julian replied, not breaking eye contact. "Sit down, Thorne, until you figure out that this team doesn't revolve around your ego." Leo wanted to argue. He wanted to shout. But looking into Julian's dark, commanding eyes, The words caught in his throat. With a clenched jaw, Leo turned and walked to the bench, his heart pounding in his chest. That was the moment the tension between them began. And over the next few weeks, that tension only grew, thickening the air whenever they were in the same room. Julian was relentless. He pushed Leo harder than any coach ever had. He criticized Leo's footwork, he demanded perfection on defense, and he never ever gave Leo a compliment. But at the same time, Leo couldn't stop looking at him. During games, while Leo was out on the floor, he found himself constantly glancing toward the sidelines. He would see Julian pacing, looking flawless in his tailored suits, his tie slightly loosened, his intense gaze following every movement on the court. Whenever Leo made a mistake, he didn't care about the crowd's reaction. He only cared about the slight narrowing of Julian's eyes. And when Leo executed a play perfectly, he would look over, desperately hoping for a nod of approval. He never got it. Julian remained an impenetrable fortress of calm. It was driving Leo completely insane. Which brings us back to that empty basketball court at 2 in the morning. It was a Tuesday night. The team had suffered a frustrating loss against a rival team, and Leo had played terribly. His mind had been distracted. He couldn't sleep, so he had taken his car to the private training facility, keyed himself in, and started shooting. For 2 hours, it was just Leo, the ball, and the basket. He was drenched in sweat, his breathing heavy in the quiet, cavernous space. He lined up a three-pointer, his legs aching, and released the ball. It hit the rim and bounced away. "Your release is too late." Leo spun around, his heart jumping into his throat. Standing in the shadows near the tunnel entrance was Julian. He was wearing casual clothes, a black crewneck sweater and dark jeans, which was jarring for Leo to see. Without the sharp suits, Julian looked softer, younger, but no less intimidating. "Coach," Leo breathed, wiping his face with the hem of his jersey. "What are you doing here?" "I was in my office looking over game film," Julian said, stepping out of the shadows and walking onto the hardwood. His sneakers made soft squeaks against the floor. "I heard the ball. You're overthinking your jump shot, Leo. I can see it from 50 feet away." It was the first time Julian had called him by his first name. It sent a strange, electric jolt straight to Leo's chest. I couldn't sleep," Leo muttered, suddenly feeling very vulnerable under the dim gym lights. Julian didn't say anything. He walked over, picked up the stray basketball, and held it in his hands. He looked down at the leather, running his long, elegant fingers over the seams. Then, he looked up at Leo. "Come here," Julian said quietly. Leo hesitated, then walked over to the three-point line. Julian stepped right into Leo's personal space. The scent of Julian's expensive cologne, mixed with a faint hint of peppermint, washed over Leo. It was intoxicating. Leo's breath hitched as Julian handed him the ball. "Square your shoulders," Julian instructed, his voice a low rumble. Leo tried to focus, turning his body toward the basket. But then, Julian stepped behind him. Leo stopped breathing completely. Julian's large, warm hands reached out. One hand gripped Leo's waist, lightly turning his hips to the right. The touch was strictly professional, meant to correct his posture. But through the thin, sweat-soaked material of Leo's practice jersey, Julian's hand felt like a branding iron. "You're dropping your left elbow," Julian murmured, stepping even closer. His chest brushed lightly against Leo's back. Leo swallowed hard, his hands trembling slightly on the basketball. I didn't realize." Julian's other hand reached up, his long fingers wrapping gently around Leo's left elbow, lifting it an inch higher. The contrast between them was stark. Leo was a burning furnace of nervous energy and sweat, while Julian was cool, composed, and steady. "Right there," Julian said, his voice dropping an octave, vibrating right next to Leo's ear. "Keep the tension here. Don't let it go until the peak of your jump. Understand?" Leo couldn't form a sentence. He could feel the solid warmth of Julian behind him. He could feel the gentle, firm pressure of Julian's hand on his waist. He just nodded, his throat dry. "Shoot it," Julian whispered, stepping back, taking his warmth away. Leo took a breath, jumped, and released the ball perfectly. It swished through the net without even touching the rim. The gym fell silent again. Julian looked at the basket, then looked back at Leo. In the dim lighting, there was a heavy, charged silence between them. For a few agonizing seconds, they just stared at each other. Leo saw something flicker in Julian's dark eyes, something that wasn't strict, or cold, or professional. It looked like hesitation. It looked like hunger. "Don't stay up too late," Julian finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was slightly tighter than before. He turned around and walked off the court, disappearing into the shadows of the tunnel. Leo stood there, staring at the empty doorway for a long time, his skin still burning where Julian had touched him. From that night on, everything changed. The late-night practices became a secret routine. Whenever Leo couldn't sleep, he would go to the gym, and almost every time, Julian would be there. They rarely spoke about anything other than basketball, but the physical proximity, the quiet corrections, the lingering eye contact, it was driving them both toward an invisible edge. Leo found himself becoming desperate for Julian's attention. He stopped playing for the crowd, and he started playing entirely for his coach. His wild, reckless style began to refine into something beautiful, controlled and deadly on the court. The team went on a massive winning streak, and the media couldn't stop praising the miraculous transformation of Leo Thorne. But behind closed doors, the emotional tension between them was becoming unbearable. And just a small reminder, before we get into the heavy drama, if you want more story continuations, bonus scenes, early access, and uncensored 18+ BL content, you can support me on SpicyTimeBL. The link is in the description and pinned comment. The breaking point happened during a road trip to Denver in late January. The team had just played a grueling physical game. They won, but Leo had taken a few hard hits. Worse than the bruises, however, was the mood in the post-game press conference. A young, handsome sports journalist had spent the entire interview flirting blatantly with Julian. He kept leaning close to the coach, laughing at things that weren't funny, and practically touching Julian's arm. Leo had sat in the corner of the locker room, watching the interaction with a dark, furious scowl on his face. He gripped a plastic water bottle so hard that it crinkled loudly, spilling water over his knuckles. He didn't even realize how intensely jealous he was until his teammate nudged him and asked if he was going to break the bench in half. When they finally made it to the team hotel, a massive snowstorm had rolled in, grounding all flights. The team was told they would be stuck in Denver for 2 extra days. Leo was restless. The jealousy from the press conference was still burning in his chest, hot and ugly. He paced his hotel room for an hour, looking out at the heavy snowfall, before he finally couldn't take it anymore. He walked out into the quiet, carpeted hallway and headed straight for Julian's suite at the end of the hall. He knocked twice. A moment later, the door opened. Julian stood there, and Leo's breath caught in his throat. Julian had just taken a shower. He was wearing gray sweatpants and a plain white t-shirt. His dark hair was damp, falling slightly over his forehead, completely stripped of its usual perfect styling. He looked incredibly handsome and devastatingly approachable. "Leo," Julian said, his brow furrowing in surprise. "It's midnight. What's wrong?" "I need to talk to you," Leo blurted out. It was a terrible excuse. He had nothing planned to say. He just needed to be near him. Julian hesitated, his hand gripping the edge of the door. He looked up and down the empty hallway, a flash of something guarded in his eyes. But then he sighed and stepped aside. "Come in." The suite was warm, lit only by the soft glow of a desk lamp. The snow was beating against the large glass windows, creating a muffled, rhythmic sound. "Sit," Julian said, gesturing to the small sofa. "Do you want some water? The heating in here is terrible. I was about to order some tea." "I don't need anything," Leo said, remaining standing. He looked at Julian, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Did you enjoy the press conference today?" Julian paused, holding a glass of water. He turned to look at Leo, clearly confused. "Excuse me?" "That reporter," Leo said, unable to stop the bitter edge in his voice. "He was practically sitting on your lap. Seemed like you were enjoying the attention." Julian stared at him, his eyes narrowing slightly as he processed the words. Slowly, he set the glass down on the counter. The air in the room suddenly grew very heavy. "Leo," Julian said, his voice dropping into that quiet, authoritative tone. "Are you in my room at midnight to question my professional conduct with a journalist?" "No." Leo stepped closer, his hands balling into fists at his sides. "I'm questioning why it bothered me so much." Julian froze. The silence that stretched between them was deafening. The snow outside whipped against the glass, but inside the room, time seemed to stop. Julian's mask of perfect composure cracked, just for a second. He closed his eyes, let out a slow, ragged breath, and shook his head. Leo, don't do this. Don't do what? Leo challenged, stepping even closer. The distance between them was now less than a foot. Leo could see the faint stubble on Julian's jaw, could smell the fresh soap from his shower. Don't say the thing we've both been thinking about for 3 months? You're 23 years old, Julian said quietly, his voice carrying a painful edge. He opened his eyes, and the vulnerability in them stopped Leo in his tracks. You have your entire career ahead of you. You are on your way to becoming the face of this league. I am your head coach. Do you have any idea what would happen to you if anyone found out that Julian couldn't finish the sentence. He turned away, running a hand through his damp hair, looking out the window into the dark blizzard. I don't care about the league, Leo said, his voice softening. He walked up behind Julian. He didn't touch him, but he stood so close that their body heat mingled. I don't care about any of it, Julian. Hearing his first name on Leo's lips caused Julian's shoulders to stiffen. When I play out there, Leo whispered, looking at the back of Julian's neck, I'm only playing for you. When I look at the sidelines, I'm only looking for you. And when I saw that guy smiling at you today, I wanted to tear the room apart. Julian let out a heavy sigh, resting his forehead against the cold glass of the window. It's a mistake, Leo. I'm broken. I have a ruined knee and a career I had to rebuild from scratch. You're a shooting star. If I pull you into my orbit, I'll only drag you down. Leo couldn't take it anymore. He reached out and gently grasped Julian's shoulder, turning the older man around to face him. Julian's dark eyes were full of a quiet, desperate longing. Leo looked down. For the first time, because Julian was in sweatpants, Leo could see the thick, angry surgical scars on Julian's right knee, the injury that had stolen his dreams. Without thinking, Leo dropped to a crouch, resting one knee on the carpet. Leo, what are you doing? Julian gasped, taking a half step back, but Leo reached out and gently held Julian's calf, stopping him. Slowly, tenderly, Leo brushed his fingers over the fabric of the sweatpants, right over the scarred knee. It was a gesture of profound respect, a silent way of saying, I see your pain, and I'm not afraid of it. Julian's breath shuddered. He looked down at the young, arrogant, fiery player kneeling in front of him, touching his greatest insecurity with such incredible gentleness. Leo stood back up, looking directly into Julian's eyes. You aren't dragging me down, Leo said softly. You're the only thing keeping me grounded. Julian stared at him, his chest rising and falling rapidly. The professional boundary, the wall he had built so carefully for years, was crumbling into dust. Julian reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and gently cupped the side of Leo's face. His thumb brushed over Leo's cheekbone. Leo leaned into the touch, closing his eyes, a soft sigh escaping his lips. If we cross this line, Leo, Julian whispered, his voice hoarse, there is no going back. You have to understand that. I am not a forgiving man. If you are mine, I won't let you go. Leo opened his eyes. They were burning with absolute certainty. Then don't let me go. Julian didn't hesitate anymore. He leaned in, wrapping his arm around Leo's waist, and pulled him flush against his chest. The kiss was not frantic. It was deep, devastating, and filled with months of suppressed hunger and unspoken words. Leo's hands instantly went up to Julian's damp hair, holding him desperately, his mouth opening under the gentle but commanding pressure of Julian's lips. It was everything Leo had imagined and more. Julian kissed with the same intense, calculated passion that he used to coach. He knew exactly what to do, exactly how to leave Leo completely breathless. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads resting against each other, they were both gasping for air. Julian's hands were gripping Leo's waist tightly, as if afraid the younger man would disappear into the snowstorm outside. You're going to be the death of my career, Thorne, Julian murmured, a faint, rare smile touching his lips. Leo grinned, his heart soaring. I promise to make it worth it, coach. For the rest of the season, their secret became the most beautiful, dangerous thing in the world. They were brilliant at hiding it. To the public, to the team, to the media, nothing had changed. Julian was still the strict, unyielding head coach, and Leo was his star player. But there was a new, electric undercurrent to everything they did. It was in the way Julian would briefly, almost invisibly, brush his thumb against Leo's wrist when handing him a towel during a timeout. It was in the way Leo would seek out Julian's eyes in a crowded arena, and the way Julian would give him a slow, barely perceptible nod that meant, "I love you. Now go win the game." They spent their nights in quiet hotel rooms on the road, reading game reports in bed, with Leo's head resting on Julian's chest, listening to the steady, comforting beat of his heart. Julian taught Leo how to be patient, how to lead, how to control his fire. And Leo taught Julian how to laugh again, how to trust, and how to realize that a broken knee didn't mean a broken life. When the playoffs arrived, the pressure was immense. The Strikers made it all the way to the championship finals. It was Game 7, the final seconds of the game. The score was tied. The arena was a madhouse of screaming fans. The noise was deafening. Julian called a timeout. The players rushed to the bench, panting, sweating, their eyes wide with adrenaline. Julian knelt in front of them with his clipboard, drawing up the final play. He looked at the veterans, at the point guard, at the center, but then his dark eyes locked onto Leo. "Leo," Julian said, his voice cutting clearly through the chaos, "you take the last shot." The rest of the team nodded without hesitation. They trusted their coach, and they trusted their star player. Leo looked at Julian. In that split second, amidst the blinding lights and the roaring crowd, they were the only two people in the world. Julian's eyes held nothing but absolute, unwavering belief. "I trust you," the look said. "I am with you." The buzzer sounded. The players went back onto the floor. The ball was inbounded. 5 seconds left on the clock. 4. Leo caught the ball on the wing. 2 defenders immediately swarmed him, trying to block his vision. 3. Leo didn't panic. He remembered the empty gym at 2 in the morning. He remembered the warmth of Julian's chest behind him, the gentle pressure on his elbow, the steady, commanding voice telling him to square his shoulders. 2. Leo jumped, rising above the defenders. His form was flawless. It was a perfect, beautiful release. 1. The buzzer blared across the arena, a long, harsh red light illuminating the backboard just as the ball dropped straight through the net. Swish. The arena exploded. Confetti erupted from the ceiling. The commentators were screaming into their microphones. Teammates rushed the court, tackling Leo to the floor in a massive dogpile of joy and tears. When Leo finally managed to break free from the celebration, his chest heaving, his face covered in sweat and a massive, blinding smile, he looked for the sidelines. Julian was standing there, his hands in his pockets, his tailored suit perfectly neat. The rest of the coaching staff was jumping and hugging, but Julian was just standing still, looking right at Leo. And then, in front of 20,000 screaming fans, Julian smiled. It was a full, genuine, breathtaking smile. Leo felt tears prick the corners of his eyes. He pointed a single finger at Julian, a small, private gesture disguised as a standard athletic celebration. But Julian knew what it meant. That was for you. Later that night, long after the champagne had been popped and the locker room had emptied out, Leo slipped quietly into the head coach's private office. The lights were off, save for a small desk lamp. The heavy gold championship trophy was sitting on the wooden desk, gleaming in the dim light. Julian was standing by the window, looking out over the city lights, his tie discarded over a chair, the top 2 buttons of his shirt undone. Leo softly closed and locked the door behind him. Julian turned around. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were shining with a profound, quiet joy. Leo walked across the room, didn't say a word, and wrapped his arms tightly around Julian's neck. Julian caught him immediately, his strong arms wrapping around Leo's waist, pulling him in close, burying his face in Leo's shoulder. They stood there in the quiet office, swaying gently in the dark, the scent of champagne, sweat, and expensive cologne mixing in the air. "We did it," Leo whispered, his voice trembling as he pressed a kiss to the side of Julian's neck. "You did it," Julian murmured, pulling back just enough to look deeply into Leo's eyes. His hand came up to brush a stray curl from Leo's forehead. "I have never been more proud of anyone in my entire life." Leo smiled, leaning forward to press his forehead against Julian's. "I told you I'd make it worth it." Julian let out a soft, warm laugh, pulling Leo in for a slow, deep, incredibly tender kiss. It wasn't desperate like the first time in the hotel room. It was sweet, full of promise, full of an unbreakable trust that had been forged in the fire of competition and hidden in the shadows of empty gyms. They had a long road ahead of them. They had secrets to keep, a league to navigate, and a championship to defend. But as Julian held him close in the quiet of the office, Leo knew one thing for certain. He had found his anchor, and Julian had finally found his home. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. I hope you enjoyed the slow burn romance between Leo and Julian. Once again, if you want to support this channel and get access to the continuation of the videos, bonus scenes, early access, and more uncensored 18+ BL content, please consider joining my Patreon, SpicyTimeBL. Your support is what makes these stories possible. You can find the link in the description and in the pinned comment. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next story.